This episode of Dorking Out is brought to you by
Potter Bank. For over 120 years, Bedford Falls' steadiest bank.
and the letter B, because you can't spell beer without B. Beer, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Thank you, Simpsons.
Houston, flight is go.
Milo, let's go. SPM, safety contact.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's The Dorking Out Show with Christopher Allen Smith and Sonia Mansfield. Welcome to Dorking Out, Episode 3, the podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories in pop culture that we love. That means movies and TVs, books and podcasts, and pretty much everything else that we like to dork out about. With me today is my co-host, professional writer and author of The Sonia Show blog, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there. With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith.
So, on today's show, we are going to talk about the big new player in on the prestige television landscape. That's HBO's The Night Of. We're also going to talk about the strange developments with Mr. Sulu in the new Star Trek movie, Star Trek Beyond. And we are not talking about the revelation that he's gay, but we are talking about the fact that movie studios are starting to spoil their own movies. Case in point, they let it out that Sulu was gay 2 weeks before the movie even came out. More on that in a minute. And then in our last topic, we're going to be doing our next installment of You're Dead to Me, where we tell you the movies and TV and books and stories that we hate with a passion. But first, we're going to talk about our favorite headlines of the week.
So my headline pick of the week is Pixar has announced that they're going to kind of cut down on their sequels by announcing an entire list of sequels that they're putting out, including Cars 3, Toy Story 4, and The Incredibles 2. Sadly, no Ratatouille 2. Sorry, Smith.
Not so. Oh, come on. That's what we're doing? Just because I like the movie now? I'm some sort of Ratatouille apologist.
Aren't you?
Which I don't need to be, because it's a good movie that everyone can see except for somebody with a pickled heart.
I'm sorry, it doesn't do it for me.
Who shall remain nameless, despite the fact that she just outed herself right on this very podcast. But in an interview with, I think it was Entertainment Weekly, the president of Pixar, not John Lasseter, announced... Jim Morris, that's right. Announced that they were kind of getting out of the sequel business, and that I think they're going to be doing possibly more Incredibles sequels, but outside of that, they're not going to be doing any more sequels, and supposedly they're going to be announcing a lot more original movies, which I think is good, because what he said was Pixar always wants to have two original movies for every non-original movie, or for every sequel. But lately, boy howdy, it seems like they've just been doing almost sequel after sequel, and their original movies, they're all right. They're good.
It's like Pixar is just doing what everyone in Hollywood's doing. It's all sequels and universe building, and I'm ready for an original story. I especially after seeing Finding Dory, I would really like to see another original story, like an Inside Out or a WALL-E or something, Not a sequel to those. I mean, an original story.
Yeah, talk to me about, what did you think of Finding Dory?
I thought it was just okay. It was just okay. It was perfectly fine. I took my son, he's 4.5, and to be honest, he was quite bored. And can we talk a little bit about spoilers?
Yeah.
I think it's been long enough. So my son really likes it when the octopus drives the car. which I think is the stupidest part of that movie. And I was like, this is a movie about fish. They don't spend a lot of time in the water. It's
Right.
very weird.
They spend it's almost. I didn't really like the end of Finding Dory, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was almost like they had this whole sequence left over from a Toy Story movie.
Right.
And it's like, well, we couldn't do this. It's not going to fit in Toy Story 3, but we got the person. They're driving around and they're trying to get out of the institute. Man, you know what? Let's just throw it into the Finding Dory script.
Yeah,
and
why
we'll
not?
Just do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, they have a fish. All these fish, they're all jumping from like saltwater to freshwater, and these are things that like adults will notice, but like my 4.5-year-old son doesn't notice. But once that octopus got in the truck, he was all in and thought the movie was awesome.
That is cool.
I was like, this part is so stupid, but that's the part he likes the best.
Yeah, I really liked. I was thinking about this because I've been waiting for a Incredible sequel since the credits started rolling on the first Incredible sequel, and I was thinking about this. I think one of the things that not a lot of people discuss, I don't think, is there are certain movies that are built to have natural sequels, like James Bond movies or Star Trek movies or Star Wars movies, where the impetus behind the movie, there's something baked into the world that they build that makes sense for them to have more adventures.
Some movies are franchises.
Yeah, some movies, and they're built to be satisfying franchises. I mean,
right.
One of the most famous ones is James Bond, which is at the beginning of every James Bond movie, Bond goes into the office and they say, hey, here's your mission. Basically, here's the MacGuffin for this movie.
Right.
Here's the guy that we want you to check out. Have at it. And it's just a perfect 2-minute way to set off a whole 2-hour movie. But like Finding Dory, I mean, after Finding Nemo, did anybody really need any more? Did anybody really want more? It was such a nice, sweet little movie. It didn't really need another one.
Now, to be fair, I would have said the same thing about Toy Story.
That's true. That is definitely true. And the thing that I thought was so special about those movies is those two sequels really line up well, and they really did extend it. But like, did we really need a prequel to Monsters Inc.? No. It's like I keep forgetting that, oh yeah, there was Monsters University. There is this Pixar movie. That's what makes me a little sad, is there's starting to be Pixar movies that they used to be so unbelievably good, and now between the various Cars sequels and Finding Dory, Monsters, they're starting to become kind of forgettable. And the one movie that I kind of want to see a sequel to, Inside Out, no sequel.
I don't think it needs a sequel. I think it's a perfect little movie just the way it is. I think The Incredibles is the one that a sequel is like built in. It's like it's ready, and it would be that one. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
I would prefer that one was coming out. We don't need Cars 3.
That's right, which we're getting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do want to see that whole dynamic of the Inside Out thing as she starts dating in high school. I think that would just be fascinating. But I hear you. And like The Incredibles, when the stuff goes down, it makes sense to call the superheroes, so they're in the thick of the action. That makes sense. You could make a million Incredible sequels, but yeah. So we'll see. This is something that Pixar has been acknowledging for a while, that they don't want to fall into the trap that Hollywood does, where they just print out sequels. And that was one of the things that John Lasseter was kind of famous for putting a halt to when he came in to become head of Disney Animation after Pixar merged with Disney, is that he was kind of putting a stop to Disney's practice of just making a million sequels, to just rake in the money.
Right.
But unfortunately, it looks like it worked the other way around. And
I will say, if it takes like a Cars 3 to make a bunch of money so that they could make another movie that's as good as Inside Out, I'm kind of fine. Then I'm like, well, what are you going to do?
Yes. Thank you for
kind of like
it that
what
way.
was it was it in the 80s or 90s? New Line.
Yeah.
Was it New Line? They would do all those like Freddy Krueger movies, And they
Yeah.
were like really terrible movies, but they made like so much money. And it's like those, and all that money went into like making the Lord of the Rings movies or
That's
something.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know.
You know what it is? That's the thing. And that's the thing that you just helped me crystallize my thoughts. It was, if we get more Inside Outs, because they made sequels, great. But if we get more good dinosaurs on top of the Cars 3, it's like, no, I want to. You had a legendary run, Pixar, but if that's the way we're going, I think I'm going to have to step off. But we shall see.
So, Smith, what is your favorite headline of the week?
My favorite headline of the week is a little bit of log rolling. Way back when I wrote for Eon Magazine and Cinescape Magazine, I ran across Mark A. Altman and Edward Gross. I actually wrote something for Edward Gross. These guys are the heaviest of the heavy hitters when it comes to documenting the history of Star Trek. They've wrote some unbelievably good books on the Captain's Log series that they did on, I think it's pretty much every episode of every Star Trek up until Deep Space Nine, but it could be wrong. Anyway, they have written 2 books to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, and talking about kind of the history of the show, the different shows, but also one of the great things that they talked about and kind of revealed in a Hollywood Reporter story is the lost history of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now, what a lot of people don't know is about 10 years after the original Star Trek series, they were about to do another Star Trek series called Star Trek Phase 2, which eventually, with all of the original cast, which eventually got morphed into Star Trek the Motion Picture. But what I didn't know, and what Altman and Gross unearthed in their new book, is there was another version of the Star Trek the motion picture script where essentially Kirk and company meet God. It was called The God Thing, and what's interesting is, so they never made that movie.
Why wouldn't they meet God?
But what they were going to do is there was actually going to be a novelization about this in the early 90s, and they even had advertisements up in the stores, and then lo and behold, the book never came out, and it's been this kind of legendary lost Star Trek story. But if you think about it, from the Star Trek storytelling point of view, it's kind of interesting. This alien shows up on Earth, and Kirk and company are there, and they get sent out to talk to the big alien coming at Earth, and the alien's face starts changing and changing and changing, and, you know, do you know me now? And Kirk says no. Do you know me now? Kirk says no. And then the alien takes the form of Jesus Christ, and Kirk says, "Oh yeah, now I know you." And then it's this very Star Trek concept of, you know, Kirk talking to what might be the God of Abraham or whatever, and then they get in a fight and all this stuff.
Oh my God, he would fight Jesus.
So James Kirk fights Jesus Christ.
Nice.
In this, which, my God, that would have been. That sounds so nuts, but it also, I have to admit, sounds like the headiest, super intellectual, super high-minded, philosophical Star Trek story that would just be fantastic.
So I'm revisiting all the Star Trek movies right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just watched Star Trek the Motion Picture last week.
Were you awake through all of it?
Barely. That's my point. This sounds really interesting. As opposed to Star Trek the Motion Picture, which is pretty dry.
Yeah, that is one. Well, what's amazing is Star Trek the Motion Picture is directed by the same guy that directed The Sound of Music.
I know. And
Like,
The Haunting.
It couldn't have a better pedigree. Robert Wise couldn't have a better pedigree for, like, wow, this is a serious big Hollywood movie. Holy cow. And boy,
Yeah.
wow, what a boring movie.
So
anyway,
tell me, was there ever any intention of doing a Star Trek like Christmas one where they fight Santa?
no, there was not.
Disappointing.
Hardy har. No, there wasn't. But there was another lost Star Trek story where they went back in time to the 30s, where Mr. Scott, for some reason, went back in time to the 30s. Kirk goes back to help him with the Enterprise, and they end up giving Adolf Hitler, Albert Einstein, and Winston Churchill a tour of the Enterprise to stop World War II or something. I have not yet gotten my copy of this book, but I am going to get it as soon as possible.
That idea sounds a lot like the plot of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah, it does, and it's great. So this is what it is. Yeah,
San Dimas football high school rules.
The 50-year mission talks about. Oh yeah, that's right. John F. Kennedy also got a tour of the Enterprise in this. So anyway,
that's a pretty sweet headline pick.
The book is called The 50-Year Mission, by Mark A. Altman and Ed Gross. So check it out. It's awesome. So so here's the question. Jesus Christ, the Son of our Lord, theoretically, fights James T. Kirk. Who wins?
Does Kirk have a phaser?
Well, maybe. But Jesus Christ could rise from the dead. So, So now what's he going to do?
Good question.
Don't answer. Tweet us your answers at Dorking Out Show and let us know who will win. Kirk versus Jesus. The fight is on.
Want more Dorking Out with Chris and Sonia? Well, there are a few simple things you can do. Share this program with a friend. We're assuming you have friends. It's easy. Just go to dorkingoutshow.com and you'll find our podcast links, our SoundCloud account, our YouTube links, our Facebook links, our Twitter links, our Tumblr links, and all our other links. And links. Grab one of those links and get to sharing. The more people listen, the more we make. Make all your friends envious with the cool podcasting choices you've made as a modern trendsetter. Our audience research shows the Dorking Out Show podcast audience is the smartest, most attractive, least prone to baseless flattery in the entire podcasting world. So get those links and get to sharing. Now, on with the show.
Topic 1. We're talking about The Night Of on HBO and the state of prestige TV. Smith, have you watched The Night Of?
I have watched episode 1 of The Night Of, which is HBO's latest big push for, high quality drama, which is something that kind of HBO has brought to life with Oz and The Sopranos about 15 years ago. I've seen it. Actually, what did you think of it?
I really, really liked it. I thought it was really good. It was really good. I mean, I texted you after I watched it and was like, you need to watch this because it's really good. And I feel like HBO, some of the shows they've done recently have been big misses for me. Things like Vinyl and Ballers and, I've just been like, not really into them. And this one is just, it's so good. It's such a good, courtroom crime drama. It's right up my alley.
So what is it about? What is The Night Of about? Just in a few sentences.
It's about a young college boy who decides to go out one night. He takes his father's taxi without his father's knowledge, and a girl gets in the cab thinking that he's the cab driver, and they kind of hit it off, and they spend the night together, and they drink and they do drugs, and he wakes up and she's dead.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And what I loved about the show is because we know it's going to be like a courtroom drama. And so you can see it laying out what the case is going to look like in court. So and he's just making every wrong decision all night. So, everywhere he goes, you see surveillance cameras watching him, the random people he talks to, how he the things he touches.
Right.
Everywhere he goes, leaving his fingerprints everywhere. You can see how this is going to look when they get into a courtroom, because we don't know whether or not he did it.
Yeah. Which I gotta say, I mean, I really liked it. I was kind of surprised. I really did like it. But I kind of saw them laying all this stuff out. And for a moment, it almost felt very constructed, kind of rather than a story kind of spinning out on its own. It's almost like you could see, hey, are you paying attention to this? He just touched this thing. Hey, you pay attention to this? He just walked in front of this thing and said something to this random guy. It's almost like the creators are shouting, all of this stuff will be important later. Why? We see him talking to some limo driver in a gas station.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, why are we spending time with this? And
I actually really liked that about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, and I constantly kind of need to remind myself of this, is HBO shows are very slow burns a lot of time. Is the first episode or two kind of lay stuff down, and then they start really moving with a great momentum.
Yeah.
But it might seem like it takes a while. This one was just really great, had a really great atmosphere, a really great feeling. The performances and everything are so good, despite kind of my criticisms there a little bit. And I think I was part of my non-enthusiasm kind of at the start of watching this, even though you were really effusive in your praise for it. It was, I think I'm starting to get burnt out on the whole anti-hero, hyper grim storytelling that we're seeing in a lot of kind of prestige dramas, and I want to throw a theory by you.
Okay.
So back in the 20s and 30s, they were just starting to make movies. They were just starting. They had sound, they had motion, they had all this stuff, and they start making. The golden age of Hollywood begins. But they had this, rating system that wouldn't let a lot of things from real life get in. There wasn't any swearing, there was no nudity, a lot of subjects were taboo, but they still made this golden age of Hollywood. TV starts in the late 40s and 50s, and it's got all these restrictions. So movies, they go from the 20s to the late 60s, the MPAA comes in, they start moving rating systems, all the shackles are taken off, and then in the 70s, definitely, 60s and 70s, into the 80s, you get a lot of kind of grim, realistic movies that it's kind of, the great age of the artistic directors. That's when you had the Taxi Drivers, that's when you had
right.
Apocalypse Now, Godfather, that's when you had all these great indie movies, because they kind of took the reins off. So in the 90s, 80s, and 90s, TV goes through the same thing. They get a rating system which lets certain kinds of television makers actually push the limits. HBO starts making shows. They start making The Sopranos, which is, so there's this whole golden age of gritty, realistic, quote unquote, more adult storytelling like there was in movies back in the 70s.
Right.
But after a while, it's like, so we got Tony Soprano, then we got Don Draper, then we got Walter White, then we got the guy in Vinyl, then we got all the people in Deadwood.
In Vinyl. That's how much of an impact that show made on you.
Pretty much, exactly.
And what's his face from the thing.
Which is funny because I love that actor. And I loved him in Boardwalk Empire. Yeah, we got Boardwalk Empire. We got all the dudes in Game of Thrones. Well, we got everybody in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Or it's just like, enough with the grimness.
But I wouldn't lump the show in with that.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah. Is
this show, it doesn't have this flawed, tragic, broken up and conflicted and awful central character. It has like a nice guy.
No, he seems like a really nice kid. Now, unless he's pulling like a Edward Norton Primal Fear type switch on us, I don't think he is a bad kid. He's just a kid who.
Yeah.
But we don't know what happened. That's the thing. We don't know what happened.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping. Oh, well, that's the other thing. True Detective was another fantastic show on HBO that season 2 was just unrelenting grimness.
I didn't even watch it.
Yeah, don't do it. And I'm wondering if it's just for somebody that all my life I've kind of defended adult-oriented movies and adult-oriented television to kind of my more puritanical friends and family members. But I think there does need to be a place in this new grown-up world of storytelling for people that are not 35 to 45-year-old male dudes who are having horrible internal lives, and they're taking their neuroses out on the world around them. And here's where you can insert nearly every prestige drama of the last 15 years, from Tony Soprano to Don Draper to Walter White.
To Vic Mackey on the shoot.
To Vic Mackey.
Yeah.
To Tyrion Lannister. To what was the name of the guy in Deadwood? To a bunch of other people that I can't remember. To Woody Harrelson. To my God, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I am really interested. This has gone to the top of my favorite shows on right now.
It's got a really good behind the scenes crew.
Oh yeah, it's got a lot of one of the writers, Richard Price, one of the big writers from The Wire, another grim, broken.
Yes. Also, probably one of the best TV shows ever.
Also fantastic. That's the thing. I think that's the thing, and maybe it happened with Vinyl last year, where I watched the first episode, and it's like Martin Scorsese directed it. It's got this kind of interesting setting, but enough. I mean, I think the first shot was a dude taking snorting cocaine.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of people were in the grim 1970s. I think it was like, you know what? No. I got enough. Enough of this. So yeah. I am interested to see where the night of goes, because the central character is kind of the kid next door that wakes up in this horrible... It's almost like a throwback kind of storytelling.
Yeah. Kid
next door wakes up in this horrible situation. What's going to happen?
And there's just like little things that make it a little bit different than like a typical like crime courtroom drama. Like he's a Muslim, his parent, so there's some things where like he's out and people are kind of giving him the side eye. Some people say, throw some racial slurs at him and things like that. So there's that thing. And John Turturro's in it as his lawyer, which was the role that James Gandolfini was supposed to play. But he passed away after, I think he only filmed for like a day. He's still listed as a producer. Yeah. But I think he only filmed a day is what I've read.
And that's what's interesting is The Night of was supposed to be James Gandolfini's follow-up to The Sopranos. And he brought it to HBO. HBO, after he died, HBO kind of got rid of it. And Netflix and FX supposedly were going to jump right on top of it. And HBO, after having let Breaking Bad and a lot of other things go, or House of Cards go, they said, hey, you know what? We're not doing this for the 10th time. And they grabbed The Night of back and made it, finally. Yeah.
So the show, it's created by Steve Zillion, is that how you pronounce it? And Richard Price. Yeah. And it also stars Riz Ahmed, who I remember from Nightcrawler. Did you see the movie Nightcrawler?
I did, but I don't remember him in there.
He was the young, like the intern.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
And he's, we've only seen the first episode, but he's very good.
Yeah.
In the episode that we saw. And I'm really, really excited because I think it was around this time last year, HBO did Show Me a Hero, which was another like kind of 8-part.
Yes.
I think it was 6 or 8 part.
Yeah, and which was really good.
So good. And I just really like these really like super limited, like 6 to 8, episode stories. It's really cool.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to go, is they just do 6 or 8 or 13 episodes, self-contained. I think I'm sure at some point we're going to be talking about Fargo, and we've talked about American Crime Story, I think. And, that's the way to do it. Just a limited, sweet thing that just is able to pack a huge punch. Oh, yes. It's funny you should talk about Show Me a Hero, which starred Oscar Isaacson.
Mm-hmm. Oscar Isaacs.
Oscar Isaacs, who went on to gigantic fame in Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Yes.
And Riz Ahmed's next movie is Rogue One, A Star Wars Story.
That's awesome.
Actually, technically, I think it's Jason Bourne, but we're going to just stick with the Star
Quiet, I'm on a roll here.
That's right. Well, that's the thing, is I'm looking over his information on Google here, and Google has this little thing like, profiles for Riz Ahmed, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace. So apparently you can go back in time to 2007 and look at Riz Ahmed's MySpace page.
I'm going to go look at his Friendster page.
That's right. So, The Night of on HBO.
Yep, Sunday nights.
Sunday nights, HBO. Check it out. Let us know what you think. If you don't like it, we'll still like you. Just not as much. Topic 2. Studios spoiling their own movies. We touched on this a little while ago when we talked about trailers. But my God, this week, Paramount, I think, has broken new ground. You may have heard in the last couple days that Mr. Sulu, once played by George Takei, played by
John Cho
in the new Star Trek Beyond, is gay in the new movie. He's got a husband, he's got a little girl. All fine and good, not the point. The point is, why are we telling you about this 2 weeks before the movie comes out? Because while promoting the movie after the world premiere in Australia, the cast just started spoiling aspects of the movie and kind of revealing this. It's turned into a kind of an interesting hubbub, as Star Trek fans go, in that George Takei, who played Mr. Sulu, who is famously came out about 10 years ago and has been a pretty big gay activist since then, was against Mr. Sulu being gay in the Star Trek movies, and he told Paramount and the filmmakers, like last year, don't make Sulu gay, Sulu's straight. He's chased women in the original series. Let's not do it. I'm gay, yes, but that doesn't mean my character that I played is gay. And then we've talked about this before, is last year, it looks like Warner Brothers kind of put out so many trailers and so much lead-up information to Batman versus Superman that a lot of people think they kind of wrecked their own show. Or
they gave away the whole movie.
They gave away the whole movie, including the revelation that one of the Superman big villains, Doomsday, shows up in the movie to fight Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman all at the same time, which essentially telegraphed the death of Superman. So Paramount's spoiling plot points in their new Star Trek movie. Warner Brothers is spoiling big plot points in their big movie of the year, Batman vs. Superman. And then the Ghostbusters trailer that we've been kind of talking about off and on all this year spoils plot points from that movie, who gets possessed, who gets in trouble, what goes on, in all their trailers for the new Ghostbusters movie. What is it with studios not being able to keep secrets or give some suspense to movies?
Do they have to put everything out there in order to get people to come to the movies? Maybe they're just throwing everything out there. Like,
I don't
if
think
you don't
so.
If you don't see something you like, here's something else. How about this? We have a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Do you like that? We have Chris Hemsworth. Do you like that? Like,
I think you're exactly right. Okay, keep going.
Problem solved.
That's right.
You're welcome, everybody.
You're welcome, everybody.
It.
Sonia solved it. That's why you listen to Dorking Out. Sonia, get it on the first thing.
No, it's just
this
a
segment's
bummer.
done. After 4 minutes, we're done. Out. Bye.
I think this is why when we finally see foreign movies, we always like them so much. It's because we never see previews for these movies. We just see them.
Yeah.
And we're like, I didn't expect it to go that way. Yeah, because you didn't see 4 different trailers for it.
Yeah.
Before it came out. So everything's a surprise.
Yeah. One of my favorite movie-going experiences of all time was going to see The Sixth Sense before it came out. I hadn't seen any trailers. I hadn't seen anything. I think it was a month or two before it came out. I walked in. This was back when I was still writing for Eon Magazine and Cinescape. Walked in, sat down, saw The Sixth Sense with absolutely nothing, and holy cow, my mind was blown. I hadn't even heard there was a mind-blowing twist in it. It was just boom. That's a way to do a movie, but it's almost, I guess that's what it is. We're talking about this to kind of hash out why this is happening, And I think that's what it is. Studios are so desperate to be heard over the roar of everything that's going on the internet and pop culture, and that they're desperate to say anything. I mean, I'm starting to hear about, who's cast and who's this, and they're starting to do a lot of stuff with the Justice League. People talking about their characters and how they're going to play them and everything, and it's just like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That movie's not coming out for another 16 months.
That's why I try to be so careful. That's why I was so careful about watching The Force Awakens previews.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about this before. I watched one of the trailers. I didn't watch any of the other trailers because I was so afraid that they're going to ruin it for me, because they're so desperate to get people in the seats. And I think that's what they've done here with Batman v Superman. I think that's what they did with Ghostbusters. It's probably what they're doing with Star Trek. And I think that's what they're doing. I'm afraid they're going to do it with Rogue One. So that's why I've been a little skittish about watching previews.
Rogue One, you might be right about, but we'll see. But that's the thing. And you asked earlier, do they really need to do this? No, they don't. And The Force Awakens is a perfect example. Those trailers didn't give away anything. All they said was Han Solo and Chewbacca are in this new Star Wars movie, period. They didn't tell you who was doing what. They didn't tell you the story. They gave you a lot of cool visuals. They kind of hinted at, what type of movie it's going to be, and then that's it. It was very kind of elegant and careful. And, J.J. Abrams has kind of gotten a lot of guff from online fans, and maybe this is why studios do this, from being so hyper-secretive for how he does stuff. But, his movies, when they hit the theater, give you a good, they're surprising. They're charming. They're nice. I am one of those people that believes that they don't really hold up all that well after you kind of think about them for a while. But they're great experiences when you go into the theater, sit down, and you have no idea what's going to happen, and it's just great.
I think Captain America: Civil War was also another movie that the previews. It would have been cooler to not know that Spider-Man was in it. Yeah,
it would have been, and that's and it could be because with especially with Star Trek Into Darkness, J.J. Abrams' last Star Trek movie, he got a lot of heat from the fans for being so over the top with secrecy, and there is a case to be made that I won't make here that the secrecy kind of damaged the reception of that movie.
Right.
But they don't need to do it. They don't need to keep pounding on this. And I think it would have been cool to see, Sulu and kind of find this stuff out about Sulu in the actual movie while in the natural flow of the story.
Yeah.
Rather than just, because now there's this weird controversy where George Takei, who is gay, is criticizing a Star Trek movie for having a character in the Star Trek movie be gay. And his advice to the filmmakers a year ago was, don't make Sulu gay, just create another character that's gay and just do that. Which apparently they didn't do. Well, no, they did create one character who's gay, which is Sulu's husband. But they fixed it. That's right. They fixed it. I guess they did take his advice.
They took his advice.
That's right. So, I don't know. I don't know if there's really, maybe that's the secret. Sonia, maybe you have shown us the way again, which is just don't watch previews, fast forward commercials, and just try to go in blank.
I am so smart. SMRT. Okay, topic 3. We're doing You're Dead to Me. This is our segment that lets you see if you hate what we hate. And this week, Smith is going to talk about a movie he hates with a burning white hot passion.
That's right. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about this, I'm wondering how far into the segment we can get without telling them the name of the movie.
Okay, just start talking about how much you hate it,
Okay.
and let's see if they can guess.
Here's the thing, is sometimes hating a movie is just not called for. Like when you see a couple of scrappy kids with no budget at all, and they try to make a little horror movie, and it's just cringeworthy, and it's awful, or some dumb, sex comedy that people get together, and it's just embarrassing to watch it, and it's just, back in the 80s and 90s, they used to go onto either deep cable, even though cable wasn't that deep, or they'd go direct to video, and they would have this kind of marketing around it where you would just know this is awful. These people were doing the best that they could, but this is a stinker.
Yeah.
So it's not too much fun to kick around movies like that because they were already fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And maybe
you don't want to punch down.
Exactly. You don't want to punch down, even though sometimes I do want to punch down, and you say punch down, and that's become like a thing. Oh, don't punch down. But no, sometimes the underdog is wrong. Sometimes the little guy deserves to lose.
But this movie is not that.
This movie is not that.
This movie had all the advantages.
This movie had all the advantages of the biggest studio on the planet at the time it was made. This movie had all, and it's actually kind of a fascinating case study, is because the characters in this movie have been used in other movies that have been talked about as some of the best movies made in the last 10 to 20 years. But this movie, same studio, same characters, same level of talent, a bigger budget, executes one of the worst movies, and for my money, the worst major Hollywood film of all time. Definitely the one that I've seen the most. The most wasted resources, the smartest people, the best effects people, the best music people, top Hollywood talent, taking their talent, taking their efforts, and throwing it down on the ground and stomping on it until people beg them to stop.
I would put this movie on my list as well.
So and the movie that we are talking about is Joel Schumacher's 1997 abomination, Batman and Robin.
Nice to see you.
Oh! This is a movie so bad it's not even fun to laugh at how bad it is. This movie is just offensive in that what's fascinating about it is when Tim Burton got the 1980s and 90s Batman series going with Michael Keaton's Batman in 1989, that was the kind of gritty Batman. In comic book lovers knew the Batman could be gritty and serious and talk about different ways of living in the world and the pathos of somebody that's trying to fight crime and right wrongs and what that does to a human psyche, and also what it does to the world around them, how his vigilante activities actually kind of created some of the criminals that he professed to fight. There's all this interesting stuff going on, but in pop culture, the image that Batman had from the 60s to the 80s was Adam West's campy, delightful and fun, but completely ridiculous and laughable Batman. So
yes.
Tim Burton comes along. He makes Batman 1989. He starts doing kind of what they're doing now. He should get a lot of credit for kind of creating the modern comic book movie. He takes Jack Nicholson, who is one of the biggest, most legendary actors of all time, casts him as a Joker. He starts this series. He wants to make it serious, but the studio is already knowing that he can't go too far, because people are still kind of expecting the campy Batman.
Yeah, it kind of has like 1 foot in camp and 1 foot in grit. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's good. I remember thinking, okay, this is cool, but it's not my Batman. But I see where they're going. Batman Returns comes along. It gets a little darker, harder. Warner Brothers gets more freaked out, so they push Tim Burton to make it more light and fun. He says, you know what? I'm not doing it like this. I'm out. Michael Keaton says, I'm not doing it without Tim Burton. I'm out. So Warner Brothers hires Joel Schumacher.
Oh, dear.
We go. Val Kilmer. And what's infuriating is Joel Schumacher does not. He's one of these old school people that they had back in the 80s, 90s. This is why comic book movies sucked. It's because there's a contingent in Hollywood thinks, oh, those are just comic books. They're dumb. They're low class. They're stupid storytelling. That's why every comic book movie from the 80s and most from the 90s, whenever they would get translated, except for Superman, they would kind of get reworked to death and changed so much that the comic book fans wouldn't understand what they were seeing, and the general movie-going audience kind of would see this dumbed-down comic book, and they wouldn't be that enthusiastic. So except for Superman, comic book movies, they were kind of like the video game movies of now. If it came from a comic book, chances are it was going to suck. So Joel Schumacher takes the elements of that Christopher Nolan would takes the same character, Batman, takes some of the same bad guys, Bane, takes the money and the freedom that Warner Brothers has, and he just goes, oh, this is just a dumb comic book movie, so I'm just going to do this kind of fluffy thing. We're going to have dumb one-liners. He casts the biggest star of that era, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as a bad guy.
Everybody freeze.
Which seems like, he puts in Batgirl. Basically, all the elements from the campy 1960s Batman go into Batman and Robin. It is an unmitigated, unwatchable, ridiculous disaster. It literally has Batman and Robin skating around as though they are with the Ice Capades,
so bad,
fighting bad guys. Like
it is so
is,
bad.
Batman and Robin literally is Batman on ice. Now, okay, it's a bad comic book movie. Get over it, Chris. But here's the thing: is that one of my hobby horses is any story can be great. The element you can pick any story you want to pick, and as long as you find the right tone and the right way to approach it, you can make something great. Like Life of Pi has this funny guy in a concentration camp who ends up, dying. Like a concentration camp kind of comedy, which sounds just insane.
But you're thinking of Life is Wonderful.
Life is Wonderful. Yes, you're right. I'm thinking of Life is Wonderful. Yeah, right. Roberto Benigni, fantastic movie, but on paper, it's kind of a comedy in a concentration camp. It sounds insane, like such an insane bad idea. But if you do it right, it's magic.
It could be The Day the Clown Cried.
It could have been The Day the Clown Cried. See, that's the thing, is you can play with any kind of fire, but if you're the right kind of talent, executing in the right way, you can do some amazing things. But Joel Schumacher takes the same elements that Christopher Nolan takes in his Batman series and just does nothing with them. He has no respect for the characters, no respect for the psychology, no respect for anything. And he said this, this was just a big movie to help sell toys. So I'm going to go through the motions. I'm going to make this movie, and then that'll be it. I'll have done my hackneyed director job. I'll have cashed my paycheck, and I've done what I was supposed to do. Completely forgetting that what a director is supposed to do is tell a story that people like. You're going to sell as many toys as you want. If you make a great movie that people love, you're going to sell all the toys you're going to make. You're going to sell more toys than you would have made than if you make some bad, phoned-in, stupid movie that they're selling, which he did. So you're going to sell more stories with a good movie than you are more toys with a good movie than you are with a bad movie. So even on this cynical, hackneyed, awful level that he was operating at, he completely failed. He makes this thing unwatchable. But here's the thing. Bane, who is played by Tom Hardy in The Dark Knight Rises, was in this movie. So literally,
I don't even remember who played Bane.
I think it was some Mexican wrestler or something. No, I can't remember who it was, but it was. I might be getting my actual Bane backstory mixed up with the actor who played Bane. But anyway, the point is, also Joel Schumacher took. Let's look at this. He takes Two-Face, one of the best characters in the Batman comic mythos that has this conflict between the randomness and the chaos of the world and his fight for justice and him trying to bring justice to the world as the district attorney of Gotham City. So it's this really kind of interesting examination of how do you bring justice in a world with chaos, where things are not fair, where things are corrupt, things are problematic. Joel Schumacher has Tommy Lee Jones chew up the scenery in Batman and Forever, and Christopher Nolan takes that exact same character, played by Aaron Eckhart, in The Dark Knight, and makes one of the greatest American movies, I think, of all time. By far my favorite comic book movie of all time. My favorite movie of the last 15 years, The Dark Knight. So you have Joel Schumacher, who had all of the ability to make something great.
He had all the same ingredients.
He had literally all the same ingredients. He had the same characters, the same intellectual property, the same studio, a bigger budget adjusted for inflation, if I remember correctly.
But he decided to make an Austin Powers movie.
But he made Batman and Robin.
Right.
And Christopher Nolan made The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, which is the best. We're going to get into it at some point when we talk about one of my favorite movies, The Dark Knight. He makes kind of an examination of what it is to fight terror. He makes the best post-September 11th movie examining, the war on terror ever. And Joel Schumacher just makes Batman and Robin.
He's got Batman ice skating, though.
He's got Batman ice skating. Screw this guy. I mean, seriously.
Screw this guy and screw this movie.
No, exactly. Screw this guy and screw this movie. And
seriously, if I could have this movie erased from my memory, I would.
No, see, you don't want to do that, because then you might actually accidentally, after it's erased, go, hey, you know what, Batman and Robin, I haven't seen that. I like Michael Keaton. Screw it, I'll give it a chance. No, you can't, because then you might suffer through it for the first time twice.
That's so sad. I can't imagine a worse fate.
That's right. See, what you want to do is you want to erase the good movies so you can watch them again for the first time.
Like The Naked Gun.
Like you erase The Naked Gun, you erase Raiders of the Lost Ark, you erase the first Matrix. That's what you do. That's the way to go.
Not the other Matrix.
Well, you know what? Actually, I will defend all three Matrix movies.
Oh, geez. Well, we could talk about that some other time.
But I realize I'm in the minority, and I realize why people hate those movies.
Yes. But we're not talking about those.
We're not talking about those.
Batman and Robin.
We're talking about Batman and Robin, one of the worst atrocities ever to befall world movie audiences. Joel Schumacher, and I know that you're listening, because what are you doing now, hardy har har? You should be ashamed of yourself. I believe you have distanced yourself from Batman and Robin, but as they told the war criminals tried in Nuremberg, some things you can never live down. Now, you might say, Chris, isn't that a little bit over the top? Should you really be comparing war crimes?
You just compared him to, Nazi war criminals.
I did, and should I be doing this? And my response to that would be, have you seen Batman and Robin?
And on that note,
say goodbye, Sonia.
Goodbye, Sonia.
Bye!
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.